What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to episode number 680 of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk Hot Tags of the Week. I am Tony Mango, joined as always by Robert E. Felice.
680? That's almost 681.
It almost is. And Callum Wickens.
But it's not 682.
No, I mean 683 though. That's where it's all at. That's I don't even know what 683 is going to be. Oh, 683 is going to be the first one of the new year. There you go.
Hey, that's where it's at, baby.
That's if we make it to the new year. We, of course, are going to be talking about everything that we feel like talking about that happened in the world of pro wrestling. Just pro wrestling for the most part. We're not going to talk about UAPs and stuff. A lot of going on in this world, but we're going to focus on pro wrestling because this is a podcast about that. And as we talk about the things we want to talk about on that front, we always want to know what you have to say. And there are so many different ways that you can do that. You can hop on over to our Discord server. You can chat it up on Facebook or Twitter. Multiple different links on that front. You can go to, of course, the comment section of Smark Out Moment. And if you are on this YouTube channel and you are leaving a comment below, make sure you also click on the like button. Make sure you are subscribed. You ring that notification bell. You get that email alert set up for when we go live for different things. And one of those things is going to be coming up tomorrow with the Saturday Night's Main Event podcast post-show. So stay tuned for that. Keep in mind as well, though, if you want early access to anything that we record in advance, the way that you can do that is to be on the $5 and up tier on the YouTube channel membership or on Patreon. And if you go to patreon.com/smarkoutmoment, you'll see the same exact tiers that are over there on YouTube. $1 a month, greatly appreciated. Everything higher than that, of course, even more appreciated. The Darkcast tier is something that's the only way you can get access to the Darkcast podcasts. The Pick Your Poison tier is where you can request things. Thank you to Guy123 for joining the Adblock Forgiveness tier. We, of course, are always taking considerations for different things. I know that he's tossed out a couple different ideas of what you'd like to see us do. So we're going to kind of roll that into like, hey, next time we're talking about doing like a announce table, try to like put that up and higher up on the list. The Redbubble and TeePublic shops are, I'm pretty sure, still on discount, so pick up your merchandise if you want to pick that up there. Click on the thanks button if you want to just toss a little tip jar money our way. And let's start getting into some of these topics here. We have a little variety of some things bouncing around and all that, but I figure let's actually talk about some TNA stuff to start things off, because it's one of those things that I don't know much about, and in the grand scheme, even though this would normally be, if this was like a real pay-per-view that we would be like watching and invested in and all, it would be its own separate video and all. This is going to be a very quick one for me. I looked at this card and I can't tell you the context of almost any of these matches after just watching the past couple pay-per-views. I've watched more TNA content this year than I have in the past 10 years almost combined, and I still am like, wait a minute, what's going on with Leon Slater versus JDC? I don't know who Leon Slater is. Jordan Grace is going up against Rosemary. Okay. Frankie Kazarian against Jonathan Gresham on the pre-show. So the guy that's got like the Money in the Bank basically is on the pre-show. And it seems kind of all over the place, but a very quick rundown of that card. I just mentioned some of those matches. Nick Nemeth is up against AJ Francis for the world title. Kushida is going to go up against Moose for the X Division title. Masha Slamovich is defending the Knockouts title against Tasha Steelz. Hardys are up against the System for the tag titles in a tables match, it seems. Joe Hendry, Josh Alexander, Mike Santana, and Steve Macklin are going to fight for the number one contender spot. There's Ace Austin versus Trent Seven, and apparently a triple threat tag match between Jake Something and Hammerstone, Sami Callihan and PCO, and the Rascals. Now, my point of view of this whole thing has been flip a coin for pretty much everything, except Jordan Grace probably should lose, Joe Hendry should probably get the number one contender spot and beat Nick Nemeth in January, go into the Royal Rumble holding the TNA World title. Hardy's probably retain. Moose probably retains. Masha Slamovich probably retains. That is my super fast run through of the Final Resolution card, which I will be watching tonight, and I'll have live coverage on EWN.
Well, as someone who watches TNA every single week, I can tell you that because this card was built in about a week and a half, you have the right idea of like a lot of it's just thrown together because they're just getting it out of the way really quickly. Because realistically, the next major set of TNA events will be the January events where they do Genesis, which is their first official pay-per-view proper, and then the next Impact after Genesis will be live. So that is pretty much the extent of what they're looking forward to. As far as Final Resolution, yeah, quick rundown. I think Moose will retain. I don't see Top Dollar ever winning a world title. Hardy's should retain. Slamovich just got the belt from Grace, so she's not losing it. Jordan Grace, I think she's going to win. I'll explain why in a minute. Kazarian should probably beat Gresham. Slater and JDC's a toss-up, but I'd put over the young star over the guy who had a cup of coffee on the big stage of WWE 12 years ago. Ace Austin should probably win. And the tag match, I would say, I would put over the team of Jake Something and Hammerstone, but that's because I like the different dynamic they bring. The toss-up to me is the number one contenders match because all four of those guys have really made a good showing for themselves. Joe Hendry feels like he should be the guy, but at the same time, I think they might want to do something fun for Josh Alexander on the way out because we'll be afraid on February 15th. Mike Santana has been saying he wants to be world champion. Genesis would be a cool place to start that. So I would say that those three would probably be the order I would go to. Joe Hendry number 1, Santana number 2, Alexander number 3, and Macklin being my absolute sleeper pick. But I'm going to say that they probably give it to Hendry.
You believe in Joe Hendry?
I do. Took a while, but I got around to it.
There you go. It felt weird if I didn't do that. Callum, any thoughts on the TNA pay-per-view?
Other than the fact that it looks entirely unappealing. It's been main evented by fucking Top Dollar,
right? Yeah.
Like, how bad is this? How bad is this promotion that like Top Dollar is like a main event
versus who, Callum?
Well, well, you say that it's against Nick Nemeth, but it's actually going to be against JBL because he'll just pop up randomly, like he does in every single Nick Nemeth match recently.
Yeah, JBL will probably
he'll hit Casey Navarro with a clothesline from hell, and then he'll stare weirdly at Dolph Ziggler, and then they'll just continue on. What the fuck is? Why is JBL appearing in every single like C-tier promotion right now and just like hitting people with clotheslines from hell? Like, what is his story? What is going on with him?
GCW, he's Cardona's the heel GM in GCW. And he called in JBL because JBL's a dick. AAA, it's rumored that JBL quote unquote bought a piece of the promotion. TNA is the one where no one's saying anything about this guy here. He's helped Ziggler win or Nemeth win 5 matches already. They're still insisting that he's got nothing to do with him. I'm kind of ready for it to move on, but I'll tell you this. I'd rather JBL than Tessa Blanchard right now.
So that is something that you mentioned prior to when we were trying to figure out some...
Yeah, go into that now.
Yeah, I didn't know this was things I hadn't checked the news yet right before we got recording. Tessa Blanchard returning to TNA?
Look, you can smell the desperation from here.
But on whose behalf?
Both of them, really. They're attracting each other, but they're both
codependent.
They're both just absolutely reeking of desperation. Have decided to just form this alliance of, oh god, we're both like considering like where TNA was this time last year, with all the excitement and hype surrounding the rebrand, and like feeling like like some idiots online thinking they could challenge AEW to be the number 2 wrestling promotion, and now just back to a hole in the ground, and gonna bring in someone who, in many people's eyes, should have been left in a hole in the ground, and is just here, and is just being brought back, resurrected, if you will, from her stint in Mexico, and it's just it's a bit of like a clown show, but you know, this is true TNA. This is vintage TNA.
Restore the feeling.
This is restore the feeling.
This is restore the feeling TNA.
Like literally, they must only be like a few months away from picking up the phone to Alberto El Patron.
Oh god damn, that's true.
Yeah. No. But
we need somebody to fight JBL and Nick Nemeth.
And JBL will bring back his border routine, and then that'll be hilarious as well. So,
look, I'm not one of those people that like is super tapped into the Tessa Blanchard thing. I know that there's like I've heard some of the stories over the years and all, but to be perfectly honest, like I've not followed it to a T. I don't remember what it was that she had said. I know she said some pretty terrible things, and I will admit, like I wish that wasn't true, and that like you go back in time enough, she was one of those people that I was like, wow, she seems like she has a really good, you know, prospective future. It could be like Tessa versus like Charlotte Flair, like main eventing WrestleMania at some point or whatever, and it didn't work out. And it's been long enough at this point that it's like I probably would have just moved on if I was any of these people. What value is Tessa going to really bring to TNA? Is she going to help with ratings? No. Is she going to like legitimize the division or something in a different way? No, she isn't. So why is this something you would want to go down that rabbit hole for? Why give yourself that headache? You can find plenty other people that are going to do just as well of a job, if not better, and not have that kind of stigma attached.
Well, let's look at this now. First of all, can they find people that will do just as good a job? Because if you just take everything negative about Tessa Blanchard out of the equation, and there's a lot, don't get me wrong, and I'm not going to like sweep it under the rug, but if you just take her as a performer, as a wrestler, as a promo, all this stuff,
yada yada, problematic.
Yeah, absolutely. But she is the best, one of the best free agent signing that a company like TNA could attract to their roster, because you're not going to get anybody from your best bet is someone on the lower reaches of WWE or NXT being released, or someone from AEW being released and coming over. But if you're just like looking at free agents or people that are available, then just from a pure in-ring and like reputation standpoint, again, as a performer, you can't really go much higher up than Tessa Blanchard. But then that it comes with so much baggage to the point where you just believe the only reason they're bringing her in is because it's going to generate buzz at the start of it, and they feel like they can ride the initial wave of negativity that's associated with signing her, and then eventually people will forget, because people do have short memories. She'll just do her stuff and they'll move on, because I mean, fundamentally they are losing Jordynne Grace. Everyone, it's like an open secret at this point that they're losing Jordynne Grace, so they need a new top female star. And they have Masha, but Masha, there's a ceiling to Masha, and also we don't know how long she'll be sticking around as well, because she's done a lot of stuff on the independent circuit as well. She also does work with GCW and a lot of other places as well, so she's not like a full-time TNA performer. So then who do you turn to be like, okay, we need another, who's the next standard bearer of this promotion? And they just haven't built anyone up enough to really take on that mantle. So if you can't create one from within your own ranks, then you have to find one. And Tessa has held that position beforehand. So again, not justifying the decision, I'm basically playing devil's advocate in this scenario about why they would think that this is the right move to make. But of course, it will almost certainly blow up in their face because that's again, we're back to the norm with TNA.
Well, I want to read a bit of the Fightful Select report on this. And it says, Fightful had spoken to talent in AEW, WWE, and TNA Thursday in disbelief that the company is moving in that direction. The news was kept away from the entire roster as of the time of the details emerging, and even many of the staff who are usually in the know. And they're saying, we're told that this was done intentionally as there was fear of internal backlash. And the other part of this I want to read is, the plan is to have Tessa involved within the next month, where she's slated to work against Jordynne Grace and win. We're told that Grace had pushed back on working with Blanchard, and the current plan is for Blanchard to come into the company as a heel. Okay, so they're not totally tone deaf, and that they're not bringing her in as a major babyface, but I think it's a bad move in any company, in any case, in any industry, when you say, well, we kept this news away from those within the company because we're worried that they're not going to be too happy about it.
The issue of Blanchard, which has always been the case, and then there's been obviously a lot of things that she's said but it's the fact that she's never shown any kind of either remorse or recognition that she's done wrong over this stuff, or at least not. Or if she has said anything, it's always felt like it's been very had to be forced out of her.
I'm sorry you were offended.
Yeah, exactly, that kind of thing. Eventually, a year later after all this stuff came to the forefront is when she comes out with a message saying, oh, I'm sorry for saying things that were either wrong or whatever. It's okay, so, where was this? Surely you realise that you're old enough and wise enough to realise it, but she's kept on working. She's been doing stuff in she went to that Women of Wrestling reboot that never really got off the ground for a little while, and obviously went to CMLL and has been doing a lot of stuff there for the time being. So she has been working. She's working matches against people from AEW that've got their shows. I know she did this 6-woman tag again with Willow Nightingale involved. So I'm sure a lot of them aren't too keen on the idea of working with them or how it could rub off on their own reputation. And that's probably the biggest issue about, just listen to that report, how they've decided to keep this hushed up. Because, that's the best way to make people okay with an unpopular decision is to not tell them about it. Just spring it on them at the last minute. It's
ask for forgiveness instead of permission type thing.
Well, exactly. It's just, if that is the route they have taken, which I have no doubt is the case, because the reporting, Fightful's reporting is good, and it sounds like the sort of thing they do. But it's just the case that it's pretty much an admission then that they know that this is an unpopular move.
Mm-hmm.
And as I say, sometimes in business you make unpopular decisions. We might be talking about that in a little while about some other things, but you have to recognise, or you should at least like give people the heads up and the opportunity to state their opinions about it, not just try and say like, well, we know best, or like what they don't know can't hurt, and that kind of mentality. It all just like reeks of a pretty bad working environment there, when it felt like, again, like I say, this time last year, that it all felt like all hands were coming together for the good of the promotion and pushing it forward, and then it's all just fallen apart in the span of 1 year.
I really want to emphasize this. TNA returned in January of this year after what I consider to be a miserable, almost decade-long rebranding as Impact, that no one ever wanted to call them Impact. They had Okada in January. They had Ospreay in January. And you're just so excited, and now it's like, oh, they're really just TNA again. Jesus Christ.
So Tessa's only 29.
That sucks, doesn't it?
She's a talented wrestler. She's hot. Yeah. She's 29. Like, all this stuff is just like, if you just weren't that type of person, you'd be the fucking top of every single promotion or something. Like,
she like, if there was like even like a fragment of what she's of what's drawn her this much controversy. She'd be in WWE or AEW right now and would be like pushed really significantly.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, that's she can't get out of her own way, and like doing these sort of things without showing any real. Again, I haven't seen her for a long time outside of like the couple of bits and pieces I've seen like CMLL. So I don't know. Obviously, I don't know her myself, so I don't know how if she has like grown and matured over time. I guess this is the opportunity for some people to find out one way or the other. But you know, kind of feeding her to this, and considering like the reactions that everyone was fearful this move would get, does kind of strike you as the fact that like, okay, she clearly hasn't matured, or she hasn't again shown remorse, or like come back from those allegations and accusations against her. So just signing her to a contract is just going to reinforce that she can do that sort of thing, or has never been I guess punished for that kind of behaviour. So it's not going to change. You'll just the only thing it can really do is fuel her ego any further. So as I say, I think that this won't go well, but it's their mistake to make.
So I know we don't want to get like too much into politics, like especially these days where it's just exhausting. But here's a little tinfoil hat thing that I want to mention, just that popped in my head as we've been talking about this. I've been seeing a lot more people and companies and stuff ever since the election being like, oh, it's okay to do this now again. And I'm not going to mention the details about something, but I know at least one company that is rolling back its like the Department of like Equity, inclusion type stuff, and being like, well, I don't think that we should have people say that we should be better with that anymore. I think that in and of itself is also kind of wrong, and we should act like everybody is entitled to everything exactly the same, and we shouldn't talk about it. Kind of like that whole like what was that thing at the military? I'm blanking on the name of it now. The
Don't ask, don't tell.
Don't ask, don't tell. Like it seems like companies and stuff are trying to do that kind of a thing now, where they're testing the boundary a little bit of like, can we fire these people and not have these people employed anymore? Can we do this? Can we do that? I wonder. Now, I don't know where the political alignment is for the people that run TNA right now and all that, but I have my suspicions based off of locations and stuff. I wonder if it's like, oh, well, we're not going to get as much flack anymore now because that Republican side of people being in office is going to make it a little bit easier for us to just be like, oh, fucking get over it. It doesn't matter if she said these things. You're a snowflake, blah, 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 blah. I'm tinfoil hat a little bit, maybe, I don't know. But then again, fuck it. I'm sick and tired of this world, so I'll just say these things. I'll champion Luigi. Hell yeah, man. Like, you know.
Okay. Before you go any further, I honestly, the minute you opened your mouth and said political tinfoil hat, I thought about the same thing, and I haven't seen as much of these straight. Okay, we're back, baby. So fuck these people. But I have seen a lot of like, hey, maybe we should just play nice with everyone now. And I could see that all of this being kind of part of that, not directly, of course, tied to the election, but the idea of like, hey, it's been long enough. Shut up and get over it. We need good wrestlers. Because that's actually, to tie it back to the Fightful report, it says one source believes TNA is trying to bring in new talent because they're losing Bayley, Grace, and Alexander. And I could see, as Callum pointed out, you strip away the yada yada problematic, and are you going to find a better wrestler? Maybe that's a lot of this, where they're just going, shut up, she can wrestle good.
Can you take your politics out of my wrestling, essentially? Yeah. And in some ways you can, and in other ways, politics is just life. and sometimes a handshake turns into a middle finger. Sometimes it turns into little finger guns. Bang, bang, bang. I'm gonna get sued at some point. Speaking of yada yada problematic, let's switch over to Logan Paul. He is saying that he's retired from wrestling, and the three of us don't believe it.
I would hope that anyone with a functional brain wouldn't believe it.
Are we going back to politics again?
Sorry, but like honestly, the people. I did see at least a couple people be like, "Good, I hope he's done," and it's just like, what do you? He was just at the fucking Netflix event, with the company. He's gonna probably pop up on Netflix. He's saying he's done because he's a dad now. Because why not? He's just having fun. He's fucking working. But yeah, yada yada, problematic. Go follow Hangman Page on Blue Sky.
Yeah, I like his comment. Wait, it was I hope the next guy that they give half my moveset to is better or something.
Kind of cool.
Because kind of cool.
Kind of cool. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, no one should realistically believe that he's retired, but it's just something that he's going to say before he pops up either at the Royal Rumble or some kind of event forward to build up his WrestleMania match with whatever that takes place, whatever happens there, whether it's just a singles match against a mid-level guy or a tag team match with Jake Paul involved. But it's just a means of just trying to rile up people to make people think that he's gone when he's obviously not. But some people will buy it because they're dumb, and some people make articles about it saying that, basically recapping his career to this point, and just feel like, just like don't buy into it, guys.
Superstar scores Logan Paul, one more match coming. Look, let's put it this way, because we don't think he's retired and not ever wrestling again, but if he is coming back and wrestling somebody at WrestleMania, because that's still, like, even if he isn't retired, he might still not work WrestleMania. He might just, mid 2015. Am I really that far back in time that I'm just like, hey, it's 10 years ago? I fucking wish for so many different reasons. If like mid 2025, maybe he comes around or something like that. But let's assume he works WrestleMania. There's a lot that's up in the air about a lot of different things. We're going to talk in a minute about CM Punk and Seth Rollins. We'll bounce around with there too. Let's just fucking throw it in there. CM Punk and Seth Rollins is possibly going to be happening on Raw's debut on Netflix as opposed to WrestleMania. So that's going to be something we're going to talk about. Like, well, how do they balance out the card and do this, and who else works with who? Who do you think Logan Paul versus blank at WrestleMania would be? Because to me, we keep talking about this like John Cena Gunther thing. I mean, it might not be a possibility that that's the case that they go. I still kind of am hoping that they do that. If it's not, then Logan Paul versus John Cena becomes like the top match that I can think of.
This is John Cena's last WrestleMania. No. That was fine before we knew he was retiring.
John Cena can't have a bigger match with almost anybody that's like public mainstream, though.
I don't give a fuck about public mainstream.
As a company, though, that would make a lot of sense.
Look, Logan Paul should team with his brother against... Find me a tag team and put the tag titles on them, and fine, I don't care. Like the Judgment Day's reign has literally been, LOL, we don't defend these. So I don't care if Logan Paul and Jake Paul go after the WWE tag team titles.
Well, War Raiders might just win them next week, and
yeah, like
we could get something like Logan Paul and Jake Paul versus the Street Profits. Doesn't sound like it's as big of a deal, but at the same time, it's like, well, that's a tag team that could work well with them.
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking me, like, really, who do I think Logan Paul should have a one-on-one with?
There's not a whole lot of people left that I would really be all that interested in. Like, yeah, the grand scheme, like, he could have a match with this person and that person and that person and all that stuff. Like, but like,
It's weird.
Would I really want to see like Logan Paul versus Jey Uso at WrestleMania? Not really.
Oh, the Usos. The Usos. Yeah. I think we had this conversation already. I feel like I remember somebody telling me
because we talked about the news story about either a news story or like the rumors surrounding like Jake Paul potentially coming into
I mean them and the
afterwards as well,
Usos sounds pretty fucking fun. Like
I would be
can have a
way
good
more
match
into
with
that than if it was just Jey against Logan.
Yeah, I mean, look, and then there's the idea of, we haven't talked about him much, but Goldberg has to have a match at some point next year.
So you don't want to do John Cena versus Logan Paul, but you want Goldberg versus Logan Paul?
Fuck, I don't care about Goldberg. And realistically, what better guy? This will be bing bang boom, spear jackhammer, we're done. Like, I wouldn't mind that, actually.
There's not a whole lot of people that Logan Paul could fight at Mania that I think would really be like, let's make a big huzzah about it. Even if it's like, Carmelo Hayes and Logan Paul would probably be one of the better matches, but they're not going to do that on there. And I'm not particularly interested in seeing him have any rematches with anybody that they've already done before. Like, I don't want to see like Logan Paul versus Seth Rollins again or something, or I wouldn't want to see him up against like Damian Priest. I wouldn't want them to waste somebody that could do a better thing. So I don't know, but that kind of brings in that other point of discussion. Punk and Rollins happening on Netflix. If that is the case, then we're looking at, again, obviously it's one of these two. Either they do the match again at WrestleMania or they don't. Yeah, okay, Tony, you're really breaking ground there. But I wouldn't want Punk and Rollins to have a match on Netflix and then wait 4 months and then do the match again, because I'll have already seen it and I'll be like, well, why do I care to see the rematch? Unless the angle is so incredibly fun and great that it's like it justifies waiting 4 months, which I highly doubt it's going to be the case. But if they do this to get it out of the way, then they have to be getting it out of the way for a reason. And the Punk and Roman Reigns thing is really starting to get me to question, maybe that is the plan in some fashion. Maybe we're getting CM Punk versus Roman Reigns, and we're getting Seth Rollins against blank, and Rollins is just getting screwed, because I can't think of anybody that Rollins could go up against that would be a big enough deal.
Why can't it be Rollins versus Roman Reigns?
The other possibility is maybe it's CM Punk versus Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns. And it's just, you throw Roman into the mix between the two of them, because Roman's got history with Rollins, and it's like they can go all three as like kind of tweenerish roles against each other. You can cheer whoever you want and do something like that. But even if that's the case, would that really be the main event of one of those nights? There's no title necessarily involved.
Yeah, I don't see Roman Reigns doing anything that isn't extremely, extremely personal, or for a championship. And I don't think a three-way would be a personal match for Roman. I do think Roman Rollins is a good enough WrestleMania mega main event match that could headline, because of all the history between them and the fact that, again, Roman threw away his entire title reign just to crack Rollins in the back with a chair. You can't discount that along the way as you're telling the story. I know I'm the only one, but I remain firm that, Punk should get a main event. He should fight for the championship, and maybe he should just fight Cena. Like, I can understand why that might not be appealing to some, but I also just sat through WrestleMania this year where one of the championship angles was, oh golly gosh, do you remember Awesome Truth? And if we're going to do that, then you can't sit there and tell me that Punk and Cena wasn't the biggest rivalry of that era. And if you're going to have, a major match for either one of them, that's going to happen one way or the other. And it's one of the few matches for Cena that's a rehash that could actually main event one of these pay-per-views. And I'm not against that idea. It's just a matter of, okay, for what title and what do you do with the other world championships? And the actual reason I had brought up Goldberg before is because what if they're doing Gunther Goldberg at Mania?
I mean, if they do Gunther Goldberg, then you take Cena out of the equation and Cena becomes...
That's when you put Cena... Like, if
Cena
I was
Logan Paul, Cena
booking,
Punk, Cena Cody, Cena
Cody's a thing you got to think about, too. Especially if, again,
Randy.
it's going to be blown up. If The Rock isn't... It just decides not to work, or it just decides to work. Cena Cody is a major match you could go for if Rock's not involved. There's also Cody Randy. I don't think that main event's in any case, though, so I don't know how many people are really pushing for that for Cody. But again, it's wide open in some ways. And in some other ways, it's like, if The Rock decides he's working, many doors become closed.
I hate being in this lull.
But it's kind of like, in a way, it should be exciting because there does seem to be no, we're not like in similar situations where we were in the past where it's like, oh, it's definitely, we're just waiting for Brock versus Roman to be the main event of the show. Like, it now feels like, oh, there's a multitude of possibilities. For me, obviously, as a guy that doesn't really watch WWE, doesn't really consider himself a fan of WWE anymore, none of the options really feel that appealing. From the standpoint of like, oh, I think they should definitely go in this direction. And this would be this would be my preferred direction. Obviously, my preferred direction would be leaning towards what's just going to be the best match, or the most entertaining match, and that's just the only thing that I really care about from that sense, because I don't really care too much about the story or these particular stories, because as I say, I'm not invested in what WWE is producing. So, I'd want to have... I mean, if it was up to me, I'd just have Gunther face Ilya Dragunov at WrestleMania if he was available, because that would just be a good match. So yeah, Punk vs. Cena could be fun for just nostalgia purposes. It does feel like it's a bit of a weird one to go with if, you've told... But there seems to be so many moving part about, well, Punk has this favour from Paul Heyman. Does that mean he's going to be involved with Roman Reigns? But Roman Reigns would be facing probably someone from Bloodlines. He still doesn't have the Eula Fowler from Solo Sikoa. So is he going to actually be facing them instead, or Jacob Fatu, or is The Rock going to get involved? And where does Seth Rollins go in this? Is he going to be trying to angle for the match with Punk, or is he going to go for the World Championship, or is he... Because he hasn't had the one-on-one match himself with Gunther yet, so is that the match at WrestleMania instead? And, so, I'd say, it's exciting for people that are invested. I'm not invested, so I don't care. But I think that it also... As I say, I imagine that it's difficult to get any kind of real clarity over any of this stuff until this transfer window ends and we know where all kind of the pieces lay in terms of Raw and SmackDown, like who's going to be positioned highly from a WWE standpoint after the Netflix deal takes place. And I think a lot of that will kind of shape, particularly like the men's side of the main event. The women's side feels a bit more, I don't think cut and dry, but it feels a bit more predictable. Because, you're likely going to have Rhea Ripley in the World Championship match, whether she's holding the title or whether she is challenging for the title. And you're probably going to, with Charlotte Flair returning, you're probably going to put her in one of the other prominent matches there as well. I desperately hope it's not Charlotte Flair versus Nia Jax, because we know how bad that can be. But it would be funny.
After a year of, like a year of Liv Morgan and Nia Jax on the rise, it really does feel like if the pieces fall into play, Mania just reverts right back to, well, you're looking at these four women: Rhea, Charlotte, Bianca, Becky. Now mix them up however you please.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
There you go.
So when Becky returns as well, she'd probably be on that side as well. I don't think it's out of the question that we could see just Becky versus Rhea for the World Championship again at WrestleMania as a rematch from last year's one.
This time Becky wins, kind of thing.
Yeah. And maybe Becky plays heel and comes back as a heel and takes on that role instead.
Maybe Rollins fully turns heel by the time he gets the match with Punk as well.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like Seth and Becky turn heel and they go down that rabbit hole.
Again, it's one of the good things, again, that I think that the people that are more invested, that this has been a really good thing, but the fact that a lot of the characters within WWE, especially towards the main event scene, have very, like, again, they have this kind of tweener profile to them. There's, like, all the heels feel very all the heels feel very justified. And the thing is, like, when you talk about, like, because all this revolves around Roman, like, every single thing revolves around Roman Reigns. Which is the point. He's the top star of the company, after all. But it's a case of, like, all of the heel and babyface dynamics of every single other kind of upper mid-range guy that's surrounding him right now is all based around their relationship with Roman. So realistically, you can just say the guarantee that Roman is going to be being the main event against one of those guys or against The Rock. You're just figuring out which one.
I will say, like, I'm obviously invested because I watch every week. I'm not as, like pure fan. Okay, I'm hanging on by a thread. But I will say, this year feels right now like, barring injuries, we could have a really stacked WrestleMania on our hands. And, you know, hopefully they deliver. Hopefully it's a great event and a great show, and because that to me at the end of the day is all I care about, that the stories leading up to it and coming out of it are actually enjoyable, because I hate the lull WrestleManias. I hate the WrestleMania 29s, the ones where they just go, yeah, we know it sucks, shut up.
Or the ones where it's January and they're like, you've waited through the entire year where we told you wait until Mania season, and now it's Mania season, but we're just going to say we don't really want to put any effort into it. The show itself will have good matches. Wait 4 months. And then when you wait those 4 months, the show goes down and you're like, I mean, the matches weren't great, but at the same time, and then you're like, okay, it's always just move the goalpost. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I don't want to see.
Yeah, I don't want this to be one of those years where we've got a million different opportunities, yet they go with, like, and you know what we're going to do this year? It's going to be CM Punk versus JD McDonough, and it's Seth Rollins versus Uncle Howdy, and the rest of the people are on the outside. And then the Roman Reigns match is going to be him against Cody in a rematch because we can't do anything else. And then, yeah, and Solo's going to have a match, and that match is going to be for the United States title against Andrade or something. You're like, fuck me, what the hell did you do here? But if Punk and Rollins happens on Netflix, there is a possibility as well that just because they advertise, and they haven't advertised that yet, for anybody that's wondering, that hasn't been like that's happening on Netflix. There's a possibility that they could advertise it and not actually do the match. It could be like they start brawling ahead of time, and then the match gets thrown out, and you kind of drag the feud out a little bit like that, or they could do all sorts of different things. And it's just one of those things that I'm like, all right, now I'm a little bit more suspicious about these options of, like, they did set up this Punk and Roman thing. And if they do Punk and Rollins ahead of time, that's more likely that Punk's doing something else at Mania instead of fighting Rollins. And then that makes me start going, what does Rollins do? And it's like the whole house of cards falls. So we'll see tomorrow with this Saturday night's main event. Well, actually, we'll see a little bit tonight when it comes to if they're recording next week's SmackDown. Between tonight's SmackDown, next week's Saturday night's main event, this whole transfer window thing, we could be looking at a lot of adjustments to what we thought was almost a guaranteed lineup for WrestleMania even a month ago, just being completely different. It's pretty interesting. One thing about this Saturday night's main event thing, though, that I think is awesome, and I'm looking forward to, is that they are teasing that the Winged Eagle title belt for the WWE Championship is going to make a one-night only type of return. Now, of course, so many different people are like, the Winged Eagle title is returning, and that means that we're going to get that going forward. Now, that's not what they're doing. They've specifically had Triple H and Cody Rhodes teased this being like, it's a one-off and it fits with the retro thing. But I think that that's pretty rad. I love the Winged Eagle. It's my favorite title belt of all time. I loved the WWE Championship we have now. I know I'm very much in the minority with that. So, like, I don't want them to ever change this whatsoever. But if they were to change it in any way to, like, a different design that isn't just, like, a very small tweak, like, you know, they wrote the word undisputed on it or something like that, then I would want them to go back to the Winged Eagle. And it's going to be kind of cool just to see Cody coming out there with that belt and holding that up and defending that. And, you know, I think that they should do more things like this more often. They've got so many different things that they can play around with. And when you have all those tools in your toolbox and you can play around with all those toys in your toy box, if you want to go with that analogy, do that. Yeah, bring people like Jesse Ventura back for that to do commentary. Bring the Winged Eagle belt out for that. I don't know if they're going to have like the old school blue ring and all, but maybe.
I imagine they will.
Probably.
I'm expecting red, white, and blue ropes. I'm expecting maybe even refs in like the blue shirts, with the bow tie.
Maybe that like old WWF gold logo that they have, like the WWE version of that. Maybe put that up on there.
I'm expecting that. The Winged Eagle is fucking cool, and I think it's awesome. It's awesome that Cody gets to kind of fulfill that promise of like, hey, I told you I'd walk out with this at some point. We had a great discussion on here on Wednesday when we were doing the predictions about why maybe it would be more fun if Kevin Owens would win. That's not happening. But like,
no fucking way is he walking out of the belt out of this with that belt. No. What's your message, Callum, about that? It's like, oh, he's not going to do that now on like the little sweat emojis.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, oh well, handing him the Winged Eagle Championship, this big mass celebration, so he can like probably stand on top of someone, like be like paraded around on people's shoulders at the end of the match after he wins. But you know, I'd still find it better if Kevin Owens won and then just, you know, kick the shit out of the title before walking out and just getting the new championship back afterwards. But you know, it's a cool like ceremonial thing to put onto it just to mark the return of Saturday night's main event. So, you know, it's a nice little aesthetic touch to what they're doing on the show. But it does make the result of the WWE title match even more predictable than it potentially already was.
It's funny because, you know, like we liked the In Your House stuff, Tony and I, when NXT was doing the In Your House pay-per-view. Like, these are going to come back. There's going to do another one in like a month's time. Are we going to get this retro vibe every single time they do Saturday Night's Main Event? Or are they just going all out the one time and then it'll be like, yeah, it's just another show. We just changed the logo a little bit. You know,
I think that they're going to do it more this time just because it's the first one since 2009, I think. I don't remember.
2008.
2008. I think they're going to do it more this time and then by January, because that's a fast switch up there to just do it a month later instead of just being like, all right, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. You do one in November, you do one in January or something like that. They likely aren't going to do all the same things, but maybe that is a game plan, is to always go retro and do something like that. I just got a feeling that they're probably just doing it this time around. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love it. I love the idea of the Winged Eagle. I mentioned to you guys, like, I was very concerned for a moment that when he said, hey, I got an idea for you for retro, that he was just going to, like, hand him some polka dotted clothing. Because I don't personally want to see that. But then I realized once he said, hey, one night only, I was like, okay, he's getting the Winged Eagle. And Cody deserves it. That belt is beautiful. Do the cool thing and have this be a part of the show.
I wouldn't be opposed to Cody incorporating polka dots at one point just for the sake of it. If you could do it, I hate polka dots, like the design of polka dots in anything. I hate, but yeah, for a little reference.
But but it's like
It's not what you would want to reference.
Well, exactly. Like it that would be referencing a thing that maybe some WWE fans would, like old school WWE fans would remember fondly, but people in the know that was a disrespectful gesture towards Dusty. So, or at least like something to like kind of bring him down a level from like, oh, you're obviously not going to be like a top star here because we're going to put you in polka dots. And so I don't think that like people that know would recognise that it's not the kind of fond gesture that some people would suggest it to be. So yeah. I'd rather they didn't do that. Having come out dressed as like like old school Dusty from the NWA days, that'd be cool. But like, don't go back to the polka dot stuff, unless you're doing some kind of joke thing.
I think he did it perfectly. He did it the one time where it was the Mania after Dusty had passed and he was Stardust, so he could get away with doing something kooky like polka dots and then never do it again.
So let's move to another topic here about the PWI Tag Team 100, which we don't know the 100 yet at this point, but that's going to come out in January, I believe. Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill ranked number 1, and this is for all tag teams. So number 2, and I don't know who some of these tag teams are for the top 10. We know that the top 10 is all I can find, at least. Number 2 is Fraxium. Axiom and Nathan Fraser.
They've done great things, and
yeah, I'll say this right now. I could pretty much, not 100% guarantee, but 90% guarantee they'll be the Wrestling Observer Tag Team of the Year.
Yeah, they've been great. I have
crazy to me.
Number 3 is. I know you've not liked them. They have been the best tag team in the world this year.
I mean, and that's coming from the guy who doesn't watch these shows.
I've gone back and watched some matches. They are unbelievable as a tag team. One of the best I've seen in a while.
Real quick, because I wasn't on the NXT review, that was one of the most fun NXT matches I've seen in a long time, watching NQCC against Fraxium. That was fantastic, and they've been tremendous. I don't understand why Bianca and Jade are number 1.
Well, the rest of the list, like some of them, companies that I don't watch and all, but this doesn't feel like a fantastic list to me. Like,
it wasn't a fantastic year for tag teams.
Belair and Cargill number 1, Fraxium number 2. Which I think it's funny, everybody refers to them as Fraxium, but they've referred to themselves as the Supersonic Duo. And
you and I are the only two that write that, okay?
Yeah, it's like it just doesn't exist as the name. It's fucking weird. Bishamon is number 3, then the Young Bucks, then Shane Haste and Mikey Nichols. Ace Austin and Chris Bay. Sato Brothers is number 7. Never even heard of them before. Tangaloa and Tamatanga is number 8. Maid Dara and Suzuki. Don't know them.
Sarah and Suzuki.
I'm looking at a PWI post on Reddit, so somebody typoed, I guess. Number 10 is FTR. And when I look at this list and I go, okay, I don't know some of those names, so some of them you just write out and whatever. I don't get it. Like, again, we're going to talk about this when we start recording the end of the year awards and stuff. It wasn't a great year for WWE and AEW tag teams in my point of view, but I also am just like, I don't really know where I'd go, but this just doesn't feel right necessarily to me. And I guess Belair and Cargill get this because they were just in WWE on the main roster, a prominent tag team. And the most interesting part about this is the first time that a women's tag team is the number 1.
That's lame. Okay,
that's the reason why they've done it.
Could be just that.
Whatever, but like, no, they were good. I'm sorry. Like, I know PWI occasionally mixes in kayfabe things, so they did win the tag titles twice, yada yada. But like, no, like they didn't do anything.
But in a year where there hasn't been like a standout tag team, or not many standout tag teams at all, then you can get away with doing something like this and justify it through the kayfabe aspect of it, and also, making the standout point of like, wow, it's a women's tag team being number 1. Albeit that there's probably been over the last like 5 years, so been like at least half a dozen, if not more, better women's tag teams than Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill, but they've just had the lucky draw of being like the most pushed tag team on WWE for the entire year.
I say give Fraxium a chance. I say they deserve the top spot.
I mean, I say like I can go through some of the other ones like Bishamon. They're kind of like the standard bearer tag team of New Japan, but they haven't had like a particularly stellar year. The Young Bucks, by their own standards, had a pretty down year, but I would argue that out of all the teams here, they had the best matches, or at least arguably the best match with the Sting and Darby Allin match at Revolution.
Yeah,
They also had some great matches. They also had great matches with Private Party, with Will Ospreay and Carl Fletcher, and like FTR and the Acclaimed at All In was a very good match as well. So they have still had a lot of good matches. It's just been probably deflated by the real like negative, which was the story with the EDPs and the Tony Khan stuff. So TMDK, again, they won the tag titles, won both sets of tag titles this year for New Japan, lost both of them in the span of a week. And then, but yeah, they had a decent year. ABC had a good year, and now obviously Chris Bay out with the injury, so we'll probably not see that tag team back for a while at the very least. The Saito brothers, I believe, are in All Japan. But so I can't really comment too much on that because I don't watch All Japan Pro Wrestling. Bloodline is ridiculous about them being in the top 10 altogether.
Yeah, how did
together, let alone
down there? Like
they barely tagged together, let alone like being on it. Consider the fact like surely like even the Awesome Truth deserve a spot on the list ahead of that combination of the Bloodline at least.
Ew.
Crazy Star, I think, have been like one of the more prominent tag teams in Stardom. I think they held the Goddesses championship for quite a while. I don't think they're holding it right now. I believe it's Saya Kamatani and Momo Watanabe, if I remember correctly. But they were probably the longer reigning team out of that entire year. And I feel it's with FTR on this list as well, considering like they didn't hold the tag titles at any point this year.
When does voting begin?
Well, imagine if it's a January issue, you imagine that it's going from January to January, right?
Yeah, because then I can at least argue, okay, FTR had some.
We know the top 10 in December, so you assume it goes from December to December. But they'd already lost the titles in November, I believe, to Ricky Starks and Big Bill, and they never won them back.
But they get pushed pretty hard. I think that's probably a good help.
Yeah,
and again, it was just a rough year for tag teams.
Yeah, as I say, this is like probably the clearest indication of tag team wrestling didn't really matter that much this year. I mean, it's odd to like not see any combination of Judgment Day in it. Like not JD McDonough and Finn Balor, but as Rob mentioned earlier, they barely wrestle or defend their titles, and not Finn Balor and Damian Priest either. It's just it's probably just an indication of we probably won't be singing the praises of a lot of tag teams in our end of year awards.
I haven't finished out my notes for a lot of things, but I will say it's been very, very tough for me to write down a lot of different categories this year on these awards notes. And some of them are just like, take your pick, and, it is what it is. Like, I'll spoil at least a little bit of the tag team stable things. I had... as one of my like honorable mentions for one of the best tag teams of the year, the Wolf Dogs in WWE.
They were okay. Look,
and it's like they were fun and all, but it's like that's the beginning of the year. They are like Baron Corbin's not even in the company anymore and all, and it's like that stood out to me as being like that was one of the better tag teams of the entire year. And I've got Motor City Machine Guns on there. They just came into the company. I'll
spoil this. I'm going to make the case for them being the tag team of the year. I don't care.
They might end up being my pick. They're one of my top 5. It's, but I do have Belair and Cargill in there for WWE. And then for AEW, I haven't gotten to that part of my notes yet. But this is a weird year. I mean, this is a weird year across the board. But I didn't anticipate that was going to be the list of the tag teams for the PWI list. But that's PWI. We've talked about this millions of different times before about, it's all subjective. You can pick whatever you want. it's just because it's a PWI list doesn't mean that it has any particular ranking for you personally. It shouldn't necessarily. So if your favorite tag team of the year was JD Drake and Beef, then that's your favorite tag team, you know, whatever it is. We got 3 more hot tags right now before we get into the TV talk. Let's go in this direction. This is it's semantics, and it's something that, like, we were just talking. You said, like, you and I are the only people that write the supersonic duo down on anything. We noticed, Rob and I, WWE is taking NXT off of the names of these, like, events lately. WWE Deadline is what the logo is. And I noticed that when that came around, I was like, oh, maybe they just decided that they didn't have a version of the logo with the new NXT logo ready to go or something. And, like, you know, maybe they wanted to do something like that. But you pointed out that New Year's Evil with the logo also just says WWE New Year's Evil. And for a lot of people, they'd be like, why is this even a topic you're talking about or whatever? It is something that should be called attention to, because this means that that's a directive. It's not just, well, it's a typo on WWE.com and whatever it is, you know. They actively redid logos and didn't include the NXT portion of it. That might mean that going forward, all of these NXT events that has been, you know, very specifically NXT oriented for the past few years might all be rebranded as just WWE blank. So that includes Vengeance Day. Might end up being WWE Vengeance Day instead of NXT Vengeance Day. Roadblock can go back to being that. Stand and Deliver, which has only been an NXT show, might end up just having the WWE Stand and Deliver logo for that. Spring Break-In, Battleground can revert back to that. Heat Wave, Great American Bash, No Mercy can go back to being just WWE. Halloween Havoc, we might end up actually having WWE Halloween Havoc in that same way, because that logo is just WWE. I went back and I looked at that and I'm like, yeah, okay, it started with that, actually.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah. This is I'll show you the logo in our Skype chat.
For those thinking, why the fuck does this matter? Oh yeah, wow.
They had switched it 2 times in the span of like a 3-week period or so, and eventually it was just this one. That's the one that they went with going forward. Well, this one and like the green variant of it, which, yeah, then we're starting to get into the more specifics.
One of the reasons I think this matters personally is the NXT events having the NXT branding, like NXT No Mercy, NXT Vengeance Day, kept it still separate from the main roster POEs. This feels more of like a unified vision, which to me says, okay, they're kind of viewing NXT as a third brand again, or they want to de-emphasize the uniqueness of NXT. Maybe that's for ticket sales, you know? Maybe it's as simple as that, of, hey, people don't want to see NXT Halloween Havoc, but they would watch WWE Halloween Havoc. And maybe it's that.
If they want to just consolidate and make it to where it's like New Year's Evil, maybe we don't want to call the new Raw episode of, you know, the new year in 2026 New Year's Revolution. Maybe we want to call it New Year's Evil instead of Day One or whatever. And then we can just have that logo already created, and it's just, well, it's WWE, so it's consolidated and a lot easier. If you want to bring back Halloween Havoc and do that for the Raw and SmackDown rosters, you don't need to change that graphic to get rid of the NXT one. It's
right,
smart.
And again, totally semantics, and it's smart, but I kind of prefer the NXT uniqueness myself.
So it's something that, like, I want to keep an eye on this and see if whatever the next
something
one...
that literally only we...
Pretty much. I mean, I don't think most people are going to pay any difference whatsoever.
Only I'm sitting there going, Tony, my God, I think they took out the NXT off Deadline. What are we going to do?
I mean, yeah, it could be that. That's there's very much that middle ground of it's one extreme or the other. But like the next thing that we probably would get announced NXT based is more than likely either Vengeance Day or Roadblock. And if they go in that direction and they change that to just the WWE logo too and all, I don't know. Something to keep an eye on. Let's talk about some. Oh, actually, we have one more topic that's outside of the TV talk. Let's talk about Rey Fenix. This whole thing about the inhumane treatment that he had gotten, and then he deleted that post and has been speaking up about a lot of different things or whatever. Of course, the thought process is he trying to get fired and just get out of his contract or whatever. There was a great meme that was posted of like a fake Tony Khan press release saying that he couldn't get a translator correct and he thought that Phoenix was just hungry and all this. And I thought it was hilarious. A lot of people were buying into it, which is very sad that people would just be like, I can't believe Tony Khan. And you're like, okay, this one actually isn't real. Like, just relax a little bit. He didn't actually say that. Where do you guys think that this ends with this Phoenix thing? Do you think that it becomes too much of a hassle that Tony Khan just goes, you know what, then fuck it, just leave? Or do you think that this is like a stand my ground, you can't bully me, I'm gonna flex that I've got more control type of a thing?
I do think that it would make more sense if he just left. You know, like, hey, let's try to just move on here, make peace. Because honestly, standing your ground, I was in favor of that in the very, very beginning of all this, where it was just like, hey, okay, maybe he doesn't want to feel like they're walking all over him. But honestly, are you really going to sit through another controversy for this? Just let him go. You're not using him. He doesn't want to be there. Let talent go where they want to work, and that's that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nuanced situation, but now that this sort of stuff's come out, first of all, inhumane treatment is a strong word. That's basically that. As I say, I know that English is his first language, but that tweet is essentially suggesting that the way that he's been treated is impinging on his human rights. Which, correct me if I'm wrong, but getting paid to sit at home doesn't really class as like infringing on your human rights. It may be frustrating, and you may think that it's unfair, which is totally fine. But the wording that he specifically has chosen is either very deliberate or like a big like translation error. If it's deliberate, then he might find himself after leaving AEW having a lawsuit on his hands, because that is very much defamatory talking about a company. You don't want to, like, as a company, you don't want that sort of stuff to get out there, because even if, like, I say, that's almost certainly false, gets that stuff across. But you also have the other tweets saying, like, they basically, again, he doesn't mention AEW specifically in his tweets, but you can kind of get the sense that that's what he's referring to. We'll talk about the fact that, like, he wasn't given a medical treatment, or they couldn't arrange a doctor for him when he was hurt, which is where this like fake press release came along. But it's the idea again that a lot of AEW wrestlers have spoken about how good their treatment as like medical and how they're cared for has gone up. But then one guy comes out and says that like he didn't get his medical stuff covered, and everyone just assumes that that's the way that it always is. You know, they always listen to the one negative review as opposed to the 50 positive ones. It's kind of like the usual way things go. But as I say, I'm not saying that AEW are perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and I certainly think they should have released Rey Fenix to save themselves the headache of all this stuff. But I also think that Phoenix going about this is highly unprofessional. I know I saw the reports coming out suggesting that like WWE have kind of raised a bit of an eyebrow about these sort of tweets, or like people within WWE raised an eyebrow about some of these tweets, suggesting like, oh, is this guy going to be a handful for us if he doesn't get his way? Like, so he might have put a bit of a rod under his own back about whether he actually ends up in WWE, because if he's going to behave like this, if he feels like he's been mistreated, then what does mistreatment to Rey Fenix look like? Is it just an inability to work or an ability to move on? What if he doesn't want to be in WWE like 2 or 3 years after joining them? Like, is he going to kick off a fit if he has another year or 2 left in his contract? So those are sort of things that are going to raise a few, especially with WWE doing so well. Why would they want to open themselves up to any controversy or issue that they absolutely don't need, because they absolutely don't need the Lucha Brothers.
Right. It's not like that's like if they were a part of the company versus if they weren't. Things move on.
If it was a different situation, if it was like 2 years ago when like the perception was very much leaning a bit more towards AEW as like the positive driving force, and then they were able to sign the Lucha Brothers from them, then that's a good like perception shift. But right now WWE is so far on top of the kind of PR war, then signing the Lucha Bros is just like, a cherry on top thing. So if there's anything that could cause them to question whether that would be a good move, which this stuff could potentially be, then why would they risk it? It doesn't do them any favors. So, but I know that Penta's already been like AAA and said that he's leaving soon to take another career choice, so he's obviously going to WWE soon. I also think that what some people have mentioned, like I don't think is being as widely pushed about that, is the people that are in Penta and Phoenix's ear, which is largely Conan, and we know what Conan's relationship with Tony, or lack of relationship with Tony Khan, is. So if he's putting stuff into their minds or like telling them certain things, then they've worked for him for a long time and had a relationship with him for a long time, so they're likely to lean probably more towards his side of thinking. So I imagine that his influence has probably influenced the way that they're talking about their treatment in AEW. So that wouldn't surprise me either, that Conan is kind of almost like translating his own dislike of Tony Khan through the mouths of Penta and Phoenix. I mean, I saw the thing about like there was a YouTube podcast that got out that in Spanish where Penta pretty much talks that he's been in negotiation with WWE for 5 months, but obviously he was still under contract with AEW. So basically, he's just admitting to contract tampering on a podcast. but because it's been in Spanish, he doesn't think people will be able to translate or realise that stuff. So, I don't think. It's one of those situations where I think that Tony Khan and AEW would save themselves a lot of headache if they just released Rey Fenix, because it's not going to make a massive impact. But I also feel like at this point, now that it's gone to this length, I'm almost like on the side of him keeping Phoenix until his contract runs out, because I feel like you can't put a signal out there that if you just shout like random abuses on Twitter or like other spaces, then that's going to be enough to get you. It should be enough to get you fired. Maybe there could be like a signal of like, okay, we're not going to release you from your contract. We're going to fire you, so you don't get the rest of your contract. Because you could potentially, if it's written in his contract that a statement like that could be considered like a breach of his contract, then they could fire him and just keep the rest of the money that they were going to pay him. But I don't think it should be put out a sign like that. Like just bad mouthing AEW is enough to get you released if they don't want you to.
Yeah, start a fight backstage, damn it.
Yeah. Exactly. Just go up and punch Jack Perry.
Yeah, and there you go. That's how you get
Put Jack Perry in a front face lock and you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that. Well, I don't think. Maybe at this point Phoenix does want to get fired, and it doesn't matter to him either way. But I think that it's the kind of like his latest outburst with a couple of tweets show that it's both sides are in the wrong kind of situation.
And it also kind of shows that it's like he really doesn't want to be there. Like,
well, Penta's released now. Penta's no longer under contract to AEW, so he's gone, and he can go wherever he wants. He can sign with whoever he wants to now. So Phoenix is frustrated probably about that, because he's still going to be sitting with AEW for another few months until his contract runs out. So he's got to just wait on the sidelines whether WWE wants to use Penta straight away and just bed him into the system and have him appear as like a singles guy for a little while before Phoenix comes in and they form up a tag team again. I think that'd probably be the more interesting way to go.
Yeah, I actually think that might be kind of better, because at that point Penta can get a little bit of action and do some stuff, and he can start feuds with different people and do some singles things. Then eventually it's like he needs some backup and some kind of an angle, and hey, look at this, who do I have for backup? Holy fuck, it's Rey Fenix. Oh, now you get a big thing that you don't even have to split the share of that with your brother, like, you know.
Oh yeah. Well, especially because like there are going to be like a number of WWE fans, like new WWE fans, that have no idea who Penta and Phoenix are. So if you bring Penta in and like you establish him as a character, first of all, then Phoenix comes in as his tag team partner, then it just feels, oh, I have more of an immediate connection to Phoenix because I've seen Penta for the last few months and I've grown an attachment to him. So now his brother and his tag team partner are here. So it's like, oh, wow, I want to see what this guy can do as well. And then when Phoenix blows him out the water in terms of his in-ring work, then that will obviously help as well. I mean, one of the things, like, I don't watch WWE, as I pretty much say on every single one of these podcasts at this point. I've probably getting much of a broken record, but I might have to tune for when they do Penta versus Shinsuke Nakamura, because it might be the most low effort match in WWE history.
Come on!
Literally, like, it might be the first zero bump match in WWE history.
And then, like, watch it be one of those things where that happens, and for me, being like, I fucking hate these matches where Penta just does that kind of thing or whatever. Watching it be like, all right, this reached a point where it was so fucking stupid that I liked it. Like, the joke got funny again. Like, yeah. So I mean, it's this whole situation with Phoenix is like equal parts. It's got to be so frustrating on his end, and then at the same time, it's like, well, I mean, who's to say that there's not another part of the story? And tossing out the inhumane thing, it's like that's pretty damning. I don't know if that is the best course of action to toss that out there, but he's totally trying to get fired so much, and it's crazy. Maybe it'll work. I don't know. Let's bounce over to the TV talk. Kind of round out what we've got going on here. There are some other topics. Rhino apparently is leaving TNA.
Oh shit!
Yeah, he said that like it was his last match or something.
When?
Let's see. It's something about facing Ryan Nemeth. Tomorrow's my last day with TNA Wrestling. I'm wrestling Ryan Nemeth. It will most likely be my last time ever I wrestle in a TNA ring. If you can make it to center stage in Atlanta, come and be part of this 5-year chapter of my life and journey. I'm not done wrestling, but TNA and I have parted ways. So I guess he's... there's a thing about the NXT year-end awards. I guess Lola Vice they did some kind of third annual appreciation dinner, which is kind of neat. I like that they would do that. I like that kind of like college atmosphere and all. It seems like they gave Lola Vice some most improved award of some kind. Doesn't seem like there's any other information about that though, so that's why I kind of figured maybe it's not worth getting super deep into. And yeah, there's different topics here and there, but one of the things to go back and talk about with the TV talk and kind of round out what we've been doing with all that stuff that we didn't really touch upon with Saturday night's main event. This Wyatt 6 Final Testament thing sucked. I just needed to mention that it's like
I don't even need to watch it to visualize.
I knew it wasn't going to be great. If we've talked about both these teams and various capacities and stuff, but man, that really showed me that it's like it's got no staying power. Like, are they done already? The Wyatt 6?
What an actor attached to Bray Wyatt, obviously rest in peace and all of that stuff, but an act attached to Bray Wyatt, like coming in with a really hot introduction, and then fizzling out after a couple of months. What a surprise!
It's
really like it's a curse of this Wyatt character.
It's because this spooky shit doesn't have legs to it. It's like it's a cool little visual they did first of all, where they just killed everyone in the backstage area and never got fined or punished for it or anything along those lines. And then had one feud with American Made that was fine, and then they disappeared from TV for a month, and now they're fighting with Bondage Daddy and his group of like misfits. But yeah, it's just it doesn't. It's
a weird name for Paul Ellering.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I was referring to Karrion Kross.
I know.
Yeah. You might as well be Bondage Daddy. They all wear fucking leather. They're freaks, aren't they? They're better off in an S&M. They draw more people to an S&M club than a wrestling ring, I'll tell you that much.
Well, the original name of the group was supposed to be Final Testicles, but
Okay.
God, Scarlett wouldn't have fit in.
Just like, man, we are going to talk about this at the end of the year awards in some way, but like, to use the phrase that the kids are saying these days, they're cooked. Like, just end it. I don't think it's going to be heading into any kind of solid direction for Mania and all. And
just wait for Alexa to come back, and then it will be firing on all cylinders.
We have been. It's been a very long time. So, objectively, with anybody, I don't like to say if they lose one match, they're cooked. But I'd be lying if I said that thought didn't cross my mind when I was watching Raw and saw Karrion Kross pin Uncle Howdy.
I did see one person trying to cope about it, being like, "No, see, he pinned Bo Dallas, not Uncle Howdy."
What?
And I was just like, "You gotta be fucking kidding me! Come on!"
Oh yeah, he pinned he pinned the guy wearing the sweater in the old days, not the Fiend. The Fiend's fine. It's just like,
yep.
I mean, people did do that, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, it's just like, they'll have a big match on Netflix when it's Uncle Howdy, and he'll do the crab walk.
I want to be clear though, he did pin Uncle Howdy. Yeah. Like the argument,
he's wearing the mask. He's wearing the mask. He's Uncle Howdy.
Yeah, I know. Like that's what I'm saying. The argument has no holding, and there's no copium here. He pinned Uncle Howdy.
Yep.
And, like, look, none of these acts, including the Miz, are going very far. But how do you bring in these people? And you do it all the time with these Wyatt characters, with the exception of the original trio. The original trio in 2013 came in hot, and they stayed hot through the feud with Cena when they randomly decided to break them up. Like, how do you whiff this every time? Just don't do it. And I mean, to Callum's point, it has no legs. It has less than that when you put the people under the masks that you do. Love all of them as performers. I think for a time during the schism, I was the only one like, I kind of like Joe Gacy. I know Tony damn sure didn't.
The only time I ever liked Joe Gacy was when he stopped being the schism thing and he started just being the goofy guy. Like, yeah, the thing that they decided to get rid of to put him in the Huskus mask and then make him just a guy. And
it's the thing is, like, the whole mystique of this group is them under the masks, right? Is anyone coming to see Dexter Lumis in some creepy makeup? I mean, look, I'm not saying you can wrestle under those masks, but you could maybe create something where you could. Like, it's not good.
Well, this is one of those things that, like, it speaks to the strength of WWE's, like, overness right now to the audience and how well they're doing for the most part, just from a character and like creative standpoint, or at least from like, how they're perceived as everything's going really well. That this group, this White Six, is as bad as Retribution. It is just as bad. It had the same really contrived, shitty starting point, and characters that realistically we know all the individual ones. We don't know why they're there or what they're doing really. We don't really understand. We had those clips at the start of it. We really don't understand their motivations or what they're doing from that sort of standpoint. We've got no attachment to them as characters beyond, oh, this guy used to be Dexter Lumis, and this guy used to be Joe Gacy, and this used to be Nikki Cross, or they still are, but they're just now here doing this for some reason. But so, you take this act and you put it back into 2020, 2019 WWE, and everyone's talking about how it's the worst thing ever. But now that WWE is perceived as like doing well, it's just kind of, it's not good, but like, we'll get over it. Like, it's never going to be treated in the same light as Retribution. But if you were to just swap them around and do the same acts at different times, you'd just have the same risk of both of them.
They've never given them any kind of actual reasoning for what they're doing outside of Bo Dallas. Bo Dallas is like, even that too, if you want to start nitpicking and stuff, he shouldn't be whatever Uncle Howdy is. Who's Uncle Howdy?
I don't know. They never bothered to tell us.
Yeah,
Like,
all they do mention, like, okay, this is Bo Dallas. He's the brother of Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt passed away. He's upset about that. And like, they kind of tell that part of the story, and that's like, okay, that's appreciated. That has to be a part of this. But why is he wearing this Uncle Howdy mask? What is Uncle Howdy supposed to be and represent? And then why did suddenly, like, the fuck does Dexter Lumis care about Mercy the Buzzard? Why is Eric Rowan going from being a sheep to a rabbit?
Well, it's always about, because you expect the fan. Well, so this all has the premise of like expecting the fans to remember, like last year when Uncle Howdy first made his first appearances in the company, and again, like they've had, and then he just disappears for a year because obviously, with circumstances, obviously Bray Wyatt's passing, you understand the reasons why that it ended up disappearing, but then you just bring him back, any real, like, not even any real recognition or calling back to what he was doing with Bray beforehand. So,
I maintain they should have just called him Bo Wyatt.
It could just, but well, that's like, yeah, because like
middle name Ray.
Just one. Well, yeah, I know it's
Ray
like one name change. That salvages the whole act, but it's like. But I think that, yeah, as I say, this feels like being beaten by the Final Testament in any situation doesn't like speak well to your prospects generally.
No. And whether they spin this in some direction going forward remains to be seen, but that was just one of those things that made me just go like, oof. Lyra Valkyria advanced in the Women's Intercontinental Tournament. Just beat Ivy Nile and Selena Vega. So we still have the same kind of discussions that we've had before because none of us really anticipated anything else to happen there. And everything else, I think we lumped into the Saturday night's main event discussion for the most part, outside of like some little backstage segments and little talking points here and there. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't one of those like incredibly crazy episodes of Raw. We talked about the Punk and Rollins stuff a little bit. The New Day did their promo and they got booed, so they left. I thought that was pretty good. I actually don't see anything else that was worth talking about on Raw. So NXT wise, we had Julia have a whole thing, led to a tag team match later on in the night with Kalani Jordan, where Roxanne Perez and Cora Jade beat them. Stephanie Vaquer had gotten attacked earlier in the night. She came out and attacked Cora Jade, so they're continuing that whole thing. They did a backstage thing I thought was kind of funny with Tony D'Angelo and Ethan Page, where Tony D's like, all right, you're fucking pathetic. Do you want an NXT North American title match? And Ethan Page is like, no, I'm upset. I don't like this. Oh, I don't want your belt. Your belt sucks. And then he's like, all right, I'll give it to somebody else. And he's like, wait a minute, no, I kind of want that belt. And then he lost. And then Ethan Page is upset that he's like, fuck, man, if I can't even beat the North American champion, what am I doing here? I kind of like this. It's like silly. John Evans beat Wesley. I saw a lot of people saying, is this Wesley's swan song? Because they were thinking that he's going to be moving up to the main roster. I don't take it that way, but you never know. Crazier things have happened.
He could. My fear would be that he just gets lost in the shuffle.
Probably. I think he's better off staying in NXT, at least for a little bit. There was a thing backstage with Fraxium where they were praising each other about their performances at Deadline, and then they ended up inadvertently booking themselves in a situation where next week Axiom is going to fight Obafemi and also have to defend the tag titles against Gallus. I don't know why Gallus is getting a title shot, but whatever. And,
Because Shawn Michaels has a boner for them.
It really does. It has to be. Gallus was one of the first options that I wrote down on my list of people that need to do something different or just like, get the fuck out of here, you know? I like the little dig that Josh Briggs said where he's tagging with Yoshiki and Amora now, and he's like, well, it's so great to have a tag team partner that's not immature. And it's just like basically look at the screen like Brooks, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, fuck you, Brooks.
They had a hang a tank thing. Yeah, okay, whatever. This Opa Femi promo, it was kind of interesting the way that they did this. So Opa Femi comes out, does the usual, hey, I won the Iron Survivor Challenge. I'm going to fuck up Trick Williams. Trick's like, man, no, you're not. And Eddie Thorpe's out there like, hey, you took my spot. Did you attack me? And Opa Femi's like, no. And he's like, all right, well, never mind then. And then he gets mad at Trick Williams. And this all sets up Trick being like, fine, then I'll fight Eddie Thorpe next week and I'll, beat his ass and whatever. And at the end of the night, Eddie Thorpe reveals, oh, nobody attacked me. I just did this so I didn't want to fight the Iron Survivor Challenge. And I'm like, this is easily the best thing that Eddie Thorpe has ever done in WWE. I thought
We've never disagreed on anything harder. Like, I hate this so much because it's predicated on the idea that you're just supposed to believe that everybody in wrestling, in kayfabe, is the dumbest motherfucker alive.
Well, they are. Look at everything we ignore when it's like, who attacked who back? Like, what do you mean who? We don't know who attacked Jade Cargill. There's no cameras backstage. Jade Cargill hasn't said who attacked her.
Right.
What is she, like in a coma?
That's my point, because Eddie Thorpe, the logic here is that he won the last chance match. So he fought three guys already to get the spot to fight four guys, and then decided, no, I'm just going to take myself out of the equation because I believe that I'll just antagonize the champion and get a title match. If you could have done that, why didn't you skip the step to the four-way and just go and antagonize the champion? It's dumb. It's so dumb. And then it just reeks of Kevin Nash texted Kevin Nash. I didn't like that either. That's so stupid. What do you mean you took yourself out?
Maybe Eddie Thorpe should have texted Kevin Nash.
Like, it's so dumb.
I think it's hilarious. Shotzi returned. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I thought it was pretty clever actually. I know I'm gonna go against Rob on this one, which I normally wouldn't do because he is right. Like it does leave a lot of stuff out there to say like, oh, he has to assume that this is gonna happen. You have to assume that Trick's gonna get angry and he's gonna offer him the title shot, and that Ava's just gonna let him sign a contract for it immediately without even finding out who attacked him behind the scenes. But I think it's quite an interesting way to get the title shot or get a match ready for in this, and to continue this whatever rivalry he's got with Ava, which I don't see what the benefit of that is. But imagine to bring in someone from the mini bloodline into their group into NXT instead. But yeah, I think that he has to win the four-way match to even be like within a possibility of getting a world title shot, because how else is Eddie Thorpe going to get a world title shot? So he wins that four-way, like, okay, now I've got the right to be in a match which will crown the number one contender. So now it's my opportunity to fake an injury. Because after winning that four-way, he now has a right to be the number one contender. He at least had a right to fight. He had a right to fight for the right to be number one contender. If you say what I mean, just going all around the circles. But like, he had an opportunity to battle for the right to be number one contender, because if he lost the four-way, hadn't shown up for the four-way and decided to be injured there, then then it's an even further step back. 'Cause then he'd have the right to fight for the right to fight for the right for the be the number one contender. So that's too many steps.
Does he have the right
That's
to
too many
fight for
degrees of
party?
separations from the world title.
I mean, as we're having this stupid conversation, it's making me chuckle enough that I was like, okay, well, at least we got this out of it. Like,
It's NXT. The whole thing's fucking silly and stupid and all.
which I usually love.
Yeah, I mean it's a fun show to watch. Might end up being my favorite show of the year when I end up putting that at the end of the year.
Mine. I apologize in advance. So I count on not doing the WWE portion of the awards this year because we're gonna just talk about how much NXT makes us chuckle.
I won't listen to it.
But Shotzi returned. That's cool that she's back in action. She helped out Gigi Dolin and Tatum Paxley fight off Fatal Influence. So they didn't announce anything, but it's pretty obvious we're going to get a 6-woman tag. Those three against Flatulence.
Trope of the alt chicks versus the mean chicks.
Yep. Hey, when in doubt, book the same thing. It works a million times. Big Man Buffet coming soon. Here's a weird ass segment that happened as well on NXT. Lexis King is backstage and he's talking to a guy that I had no idea who the hell he was because I don't follow NFL, but former NFL quarterback Ryan Leaf. And this was so fucking awkward. He's like, "Hey, Ryan Leaf, thank you for telling me to go to Minneapolis." And Ryan Leaf is like, "Oh yeah, man, you're an inspiration." What? And it's like, what the fuck are you two talking about? And then Charlie Dempsey comes over and he's like, "Hey, what's up? You want a Heritage Cup match or something? Because you're pretty fucking great right now or something or whatever."
What?
And it's like, wait a minute, what the fuck? Who wrote this shit? You couldn't have figured out a better way to incorporate doing a rematch for the Heritage Cup. You had to have this to be the way that you do that with these two jerking each other off over you're a loser, but you're cool. You're a loser, but you're cool. And Dempsey's like, "Nah, Heritage Cup." Weird fucking segment.
You know what that reminded me of? The Simpsons. I have to go to school now, Tony Hawk. Bye, Tony Hawk. Because I didn't know who the fuck Ryan Leaf was. He's not like some known quarterback that I was like, okay, it's this guy. What was all of that?
I guess he was a dude that got like second round draft pick and then became a complete failure. And it was
No, he was a I actually remember this because like there's a sort of time. I'm not a big follower of American football, but I am a big proponent of just diving into random topics through YouTube, just kicking around stuff every now and again. So he was the guy that was I think he was a very, very high draft pick in the NFL draft. I believe may have been in the same draft year as Tom Brady. I think
Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or somebody.
Somebody
some
like
important dude, who's in like that era, not like a Brett Favre or something.
yeah, and he comes in and is like meant to be seen as like I think he was at least the highest drafted quarterback of that year, and everyone just assumes that he's just going to come in and just dominate things. I think he lasted 4 seasons in the NFL, so didn't even survive that long in the entire competition. So from 98 to 2002 was his run as a player, and then he became like a coach for West Texas A&M, so a college football coach for a little while as well. But yeah, it's just the representation of the fact that he's considered one of the biggest draft busts in NFL history, and so they're just using him as a kind of a representation of failed potential.
Oh, good. I feel so motivated for Lexis King now.
Well, yeah, that's like that. I mean, at this point, that's been his story for the last at least 3 months, if not longer. Is he just like a guy that's a loser, pretty much? A guy that wants to break out of his father's shadow, but will eventually realise that the only way he can be successful is he just embraces the fact that he's Brian Pillman Jr.
Hey, maybe that's the ultimate end goal is they just rename him Brian Pillman Jr.
The funny thing is, the first week they had a good back and forth, and then he won a match using a pinfall that Pillman used against Liger. And I thought, okay, so the fun part is I do have to embrace my dad, just not the loose cannon version, but the flying Brian version. And then they just reverted to, no, you're a loser. Like, fuck. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, so it's a weird episode of NXT, but it's cool that Shotzi's back. It's interesting that they're going in some directions. Some of them are just silly and okay, I'll go for the ride, whatever. And some of it's just dumb and I don't like it. But that's a wide variety of options on NXT. You never know what you're gonna get. And I'm still not seeing anything about SmackDown for tonight to round out the WWE side of this things, other than just the preview for like Carmelo Hayes is fighting somebody and we still don't know who it is, and they're gonna have a face-to-face thing or something with Cody and Kevin Owens and whatever. But if we do get any kind of like weird things that happen on that, I'll be having my coverage on like spoilers for SmackDown and kind of trying to pay attention to that. But let's bounce back around to the Dynamite side of things and talk about the Winter is Coming episode of Dynamite. And one of those things that had happened throughout that night that was something that's pretty important going forward. Death Riders had their match, Jon Moxley and Pac against Jay White and Orange Cassidy, and did kind of similar to how I was expecting, where Hangman Adam Page would get involved, and he ended up causing a disqualification. Bunch of all people fight in the ring and all, and it leads to the three, I wouldn't say the three babyfaces, three antagonists to the world champion fighting each other, and Moxley being like, how about I just fight all of you at the same time? Your egos are getting in the way of yourselves, and fuck you. I like having a stick of dynamite in my hand and all. So we do have confirmation now. It is a 4-way for the AEW World Championship that is going to be happening at World's End.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. That should be a really fun match. And I fully expect Christian Cage to walk out of Orlando with the title.
I don't.
No, I think that
this is going on for a while.
Yeah, I think Moxley's going to retain, and I think there's going to be a lot of involvement of all the other guys that helps Moxley get the opportunity to get the victory. But yeah, I mean, I like the match that they had, but I always get a bit annoyed when AEW matches end in no contest, which has become just a bit more frequent in recent times. So when Adam Page comes out and just decides to attack Moxley towards the end, I can understand the rationale behind it. Everyone's weakened now, so he just comes in and he's there to pick up the bone because he is still technically a heel. So, but then all the other guys like attack each other, and then the Death Riders use that as an opportunity to start beating the shit out of all of them and leave them laying. So yeah, I think that the match itself will be a good, like the 4-way sounds like it'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, I still think that it makes it pretty clear Moxley's not going to drop the title there. I don't think that. I'm kind of like, because we move on to the next thing, which involves like Christian Cage talking about like just kind of promo about his contract and wanting to cash in and gets attacked by Hook. I'm kind of it's one of my things that's I'm most negative about this year is not that Christian won a match at All In. It's this Money in the Bank thing. I don't like the fact that AEW has Money in the Bank. It's like it's a WWE thing. It's totally fine for WWE to have it, and it's a good prop, but AEW shouldn't have its own iteration of Money in the Bank. So yeah, I just think that just means that Christian's just been doing kind of nothing for the last couple of months because that's all his story has been revolved around, and it's going to feel pretty empty if he doesn't fulfill it. But I kind of don't want him to fulfill it because, like, even though I love Christian, be totally fine with him being the world champion, I don't want him to win the world title this way.
I'm still anticipating Darby Allin beats Jon Moxley. He goes through hell to do it, and then Christian cashes in and wins the title.
Obviously, that's a real possibility and probably the most likely outcome, but it's still not something that I'm particularly looking forward to. But yeah, I'd say the current world title match that will take place at World's End sounds like it'll be fun anyway. So
they had Sorry. Another one of those vignettes about Bandito. I was at the time I'm watching this, and my wife's on the couch, and she's kind of like scrolling through TikTok and whatever. And I was like, "Oh, you want to see some great acting at the beginning of the segment? Because these things are just as silly and stupid as you would see on NXT. This like most wanted man, Bandito. I'm not taking it all that much, but it's kind of funny. So I'd rather watch that than something that's equally as bad, but less interesting. Like maybe the backstage segment with Top Flight and Private Party, where at that point funny. I was just sort of like, okay, you got Lio Rush and Action Andretti wearing these goofy ass outfits, and the implosion of Top Flight to settle on who's going to get that title match. Sure, whatever. Do a 3-way. That happened a little bit later on, and I'm just bouncing around when it comes to that. We had some updates to the Continental Classic. Well, Ospreay beat Claudio Castagnoli. So now, between that and Ricochet beating Brody King, we have a 3-way tie on the Gold League going on.
Yeah, that's Ospreay, Claudio, and Ricochet all on 6 points, shared at the top of the Gold League. Followed then by Brody King and Darby Allin on 3 points. Commander, obviously a substitute that's come in for Juice Robinson, is on 0 points, as you'd expect. I imagine that he won't win any matches. I will say, though, Commander is doing very well in terms of his actual match quality. I think he's had some excellent matches against both Ricochet and Claudio was the match, I believe. But, yeah, it's a shame that he won't get the match against Ospreay because Juice got that one before he got injured. But yeah, I think he's doing a very good job. It does make it pretty much a bit of a toss-up in terms of who will be the one to go through. I think Ospreay's still got 3 matches left because he hasn't had as many matches as the others. So he's still got to face Brody King, he's still got to face Darby Allin, he's still got to face Ricochet. So it's probably the likelihood is he'll be one of the two. We're all pretty clear about that. But it'd be interesting to see if either Ricochet or Claudio will follow him up there, because I assume it's one of those two that will be the other guy in the top 2. Yeah, those were good matches, though.
Good.
I forget what match it was, but I was watching one of the Continental Classic matches this week, and I was just like, it's a great tournament. I wish I cared more about that particular title, because you're just sort of left like, yeah, okay, cool, it's a fun tournament, but the belt itself, I didn't do anything the last year, so I don't feel like the urgency as if I would have, oh, this is so much fun because it's for a title shot or another belt that has more prestige to it. But, you know, matches are good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying the matches. I enjoy the fact that like the matches at the weekend, like on both Rampage and Collision, were really good for the most part. Like you had like Mark Briscoe beating Daniel Garcia and Carl Fletcher beat Okada. So it's like, okay, it's showing that like, okay, they're really behind Carl Fletcher. Like Carl Fletcher's going super deep into this tournament. He's being presented as a top star, which is good, because there's always the worry when someone wins a big match in AEW, they don't follow up on it properly, but they're showing that they're going to follow up with Fletcher, which is good.
We also know another match that's happening on World's End where Adam Cole beat Kyle O'Reilly, meaning that Cole is going to fight MJF for the Dynamite Diamond Ring at World's End. And I'm still leaning in that direction of, like, you know what, Cole could be the guy that beats MJF for this, and maybe they just get rid of the ring, or maybe it's, you know, just a means to throw MJF into a fit or something. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into our predictions, but I was a little bit surprised because I was expecting that Kyle O'Reilly would win this.
Yeah, this match for me was one of the ones where I'll just call it like I see it. I started to get a little afraid that, okay, maybe Adam is just always, he'll never get back to the spot where he was pre-injury. This match felt a little off. The crowd was definitely dead for it, which was upsetting for me as somebody who's a big fan of these two. But I'm really getting worried that, like, okay, there will forever be a pre-Adam Cole injury, and a post Adam Cole. You know what I mean? Like, it's not as sharp as it was.
Yeah, well, as I say, I'm not been a fan of this whole rivalry since it started, and especially with Adam Cole's return later this year, I just don't think that he's done particularly well. I don't think the fact that MJF has not really been involved in it at all, for the most part, outside of just being in, like, promos or via satellite shots instead. I don't think that has helped things either. So yeah, it's probably the match I'm gonna, regardless of what other matches get announced for World's End, this will probably be the one that I'm least looking forward to.
And we also had some little bits and pieces here and there, like FTR saying they don't have an issue with Death Riders, but let's meet each other and start a feud at Collision, basically. And this backstage face-to-face thing with Mercedes Moné and Anna Jay that sucked. You're going to hear a lot of Mercedes Moné on my end of the year awards, so I'm going to say that. It's not going to be in a good way. And they ended this whole episode with Mariah May retaining her AEW World Championship, Women's World Title, over Mina Shirakawa. And then as Thunder Rosa was ringside holding up these like signs and doing whatever that gimmick is.
Very funny. Very funny. Stupid for her gimmick, but very funny to me.
We get the return of Toni Storm. You know, the one that just retired.
Well, okay.
Well, timeless Toni Storm retired.
Yeah. It seems like that's the way we're going here.
Oh, we got to make sure that Bo Dallas gets pinned.
Yeah. But yeah, so the match between Mariah and Vincenzo was pretty good. As I think those two have decent chemistry because they've tagged together for so long, so they had a good match. But yeah, Mariah won, as everyone knew was going to happen. They've been building up both on a lot of the other shows that Thunder Rosa was going to challenge whoever was victorious for the women's title. So they're seemingly going to do that. That'll probably be the World's End match. I don't think they're going to go straight into Toni versus Mariah, because they're having Toni come back on her first match back on Rampage. And so I imagine they'll be building her back up, or they're going to keep her kind of, doing stuff at the same time as Mariah, but keep them somewhat separate until the Grand Slam Australia show. I imagine that'll be where the match takes place. I don't know. So Toni Storm coming back as the iteration of Toni Storm is interesting. I don't know how genuine it is, in the sense that I could totally see her just coming back as this version of Toni Storm is either some kind of, well, it's one of two things. I think it's either the timeless Toni Storm character is having a mental breakdown and is reverting back to her old style before she comes back as timeless Toni later on, or it's a deliberate ruse to be this character before just re-emerging as timeless Toni later, closer to the match with Mariah. So, and I don't know what the rationale of that would be, but I just don't think that this is going to be a long-term return to this gimmick unless it proves like super popular, and it feels like, okay, well, let's just not switch it back, because people seem to be reconnecting with this version and liking it more than the timeless Toni one. So we'll see. I mean, it's good to have this iteration back, because I think this means that she'll wrestle more like the old Toni Storm, and more, I'd say, like more seriously, but at least more aggressively, with less theatrics and less like dancing around in the ring and all that stuff. She'll just, wrestle people, and she's really good at that. So hopefully that's what we'll see out of this, I guess, revitalization of the old Toni Storm character. But as I say, it adds a different dimension to the match with Mariah May that will inevitably happen in a couple of months' time.
My biggest problem, first of all, was that she didn't rush the ring and attack Mariah. But you're pitching it as oh, she's just doing a ruse, and maybe that's why she didn't go after Mariah, because she's playing the role of the old Toni Storm, if she doesn't have any issues with Mariah? Or do you just think that it's just a clever way to eventually get back to timeless Toni?
That's what I'm just imagining, just because I feel like there's a subsection of the audience that was super into Timeless Tony, and I don't think they necessarily want to lose that. But maybe that's just me feeling like trying to think of the worst case scenario. Maybe it's just this character is back and it's here to stay, because, I mean, she did go pretty hard in terms of the interviews that she gave towards the end. Like, she doesn't want to be a loser anymore, and that's why the Timeless Tony character is retiring. So maybe her coming back as old school Toni Storm is more of an idea of like, okay, being Timeless Tony wasn't working towards the end. I lost a load of big matches in a row, so I need to go back to my roots and be who I was again, and that's going to bring me back to success. So hopefully that's the route, because that means that this character will stay around, which is my preferred version of Toni Storm.
So I actually do have to backtrack and talk about WWE again for the end of this, because I bothered to look on cage side seats, which I shout out to them. They have some little bits and pieces of some stuff that might factor into SmackDown tonight and Saturday night's main event. Before we get into that, though, they also have some stuff like Brian Alvarez was reporting that people backstage were, quote, appalled that Toni Storm's return match is happening on Rampage. Whatever, if you want to make people tune in to the show, then, you know, you got to do matches there.
What's the argument with this stuff?
Yeah, and like they had Okada wrestle.
Well, it's always like the one or two things, because like they'll always complain that like, why would anyone tune in to watch Rampage, because you never put anything good on it, and then when they do put something that would actually make people want to tune into Rampage, say, oh, why are they on Rampage actually on Dynamite or Collision? Because people only watch those shows. It's like, you can't have it both ways, motherfuckers.
Yeah,
like,
so, I love that phrase in this podcast. You can't have it both ways.
Good things are good, you know, right?
So you're still gonna watch it. Like if you're so appalled by it, fucking watch them. Just watch it. Just watch the show, man. Like, you don't have to watch Rampage immediately. Watch it afterwards, or like just DVR it, or watch it on Fight afterwards. It's like, cause I'm not gonna watch it live, but I'll watch it the next day, because that's what I do if I want to watch Rampage.
Yeah, if you want to watch it. If you don't, like, I'm not gonna bother to watch it because I don't care. But I wouldn't have watched it on, if that was like the WWE equivalent and they decided to put that on main event, I wouldn't have watched it because I wouldn't care. It's just, I would be paying more attention to it on Dynamite because I pay more attention to Dynamite. If I really loved Toni Storm, I'd watch the fucking Rampage match. You can't put nothing on shows and, do that. But these are some other talking points that they put out there that I was like, okay, I don't know if there's any truth to this or not, but, shout out to Cage Side Seats for their rumor roundup and trying to make this a little bit easier for people that don't want to browse every single news site for every single snippet of every transcription and all this other kind of crap. But I'm a part of the same system too, and I fucking hate it. There's not only a push for people about Natty winning the Intercontinental title, which we talked about, but at least Chris Featherstone, which name's been popping up a lot lately, has Chelsea Green as being the one to win the U.S. title for the women's division.
Well, that sounds to me like somebody got a source recently, because his name has been popping up more. Like, he's been around for a long time, but he's been popping up more in this aspect. So also, that's interesting. We'll
see. I guess obviously tonight, if Chelsea Green beats Bayley, then it's like, okay, shit. But also, Featherstone is saying Braun Strowman is the person that is going to fight Carmelo Hayes tonight.
Man, come on. That's lame.
It's a lot less impactful. I'm a big Braun Strowman fan, but a lot less impactful than Trick Williams or Penta or, some kind of big switch. Are you a big
Braun Strowman fan, or were you a big Braun Strowman fan 8 years ago?
Yes. To me, like, that's not going to make a big impact to have Braun Strowman be like, okay, he can throw around Carmelo Hayes. Cool. Sure, whatever. But that's just, let's play around with throwing people onto different rosters in the meantime until we settle on where we want to go, as opposed to like the Penta thing would be a big, big news story. And, but if we get Strowman against Carmelo Hayes, that gives more credibility to Featherstone. And if we get Chelsea Green beating Bayley, then yeah, maybe Chelsea Green is the one that wins that U.S. title. And by the time we get around to that tomorrow, we might end up having a different story than the Bayley thing that we were talking about before. So we got to keep our eyes peeled for those things to happen on SmackDown tonight. That is happening in a little bit here. We'll have like our usual, it's not going to take me long to upload this when we get done. So for anybody that's listening to this and we're an hour past what it was, or 2 hours, whatever, then, hey, maybe it already started when you're listening to this. It is. But that's at least the whole set of hot tags that I've got written down here. And if anything else changes before Saturday night's main event, we'll adjust Saturday night's main event and play around with that on smarkoutmoment.com. Any wrestling news, pay attention to that post show coming up tomorrow night. We're going to have that immediately following Saturday night's main event, and we'll talk about it, whatever happens there. Make sure that you are following us on all these different platforms. Make sure that you go to check out what's on Fanboys Anonymous, on all those different things. Go to the link tree that you can find at amangotree.com and like, share, follow, favorite, and subscribe to all those things. Follow me at Tony Mango. Make sure you're following Rob and Callum as well.
Yep, follow me everywhere at Dude Felice. That's on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitch, even YouTube. I always appreciate the follows. If people want to see individualized content from me, I might get motivated. So, there's always something to think about there. But yeah, you should also check out what Callum has going on.
You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Wigmeister14. Check out the Power Rankings every single Saturday on smarkoutmoment.com. I rank the WWE superstars based on their prior week's performances. And also check out the Fantasy League, also at www.fantasyleague.com, and you can find it through Smark Moment as well to see how our teams, our rosters are doing, who's picking up points from this past week, where the standings are right now. And just follow along for all of that good stuff.
Okie dokie, everybody, you know the score. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Double check you are subscribed. Leave those comments below and stay tuned. Saturday night's main event pay-per-view point post show coming up tomorrow night. We got the AEW and WWE awards that we're going to be recording next week. So start writing on your lists, and we'll see you when we see you, everybody. Adios for now, though. This has been another Smark Out moment, and we're being counted out.